3 months after the demonstration, Nexus Point Station had changed in ways both small and large. Hyunwoo noticed it every day, the way aliens no longer scattered when he walked through the corridors with Komi. The way some even stopped to ask questions or request pictures. The fear had not completely disappeared, but it had transformed into something else. Curiosity, wonder, respect. Komi had grown into her full size now. She stood as tall as Hyunwoo's shoulder when on all fours, a magnificent creature of scales and muscle and sharp edges. Her golden eyes still held that same intelligence, that same trust she had shown from the beginning. But now she moved with confidence, comfortable in her home on the station. Hyunwoo's role had evolved too. He was no longer just a cargo handler. His official title was now Interspecies Behavioral Specialist, a position that had not existed before he arrived. His days were filled with consultations, training sessions, and video conferences with researchers from across the galaxy. Dr. Kara had become his partner in this work. Her scientific expertise combined with his practical experience created something new. They were writing papers together, developing training protocols, teaching others what humanity had learned over thousands of years of living alongside predators. "We have another request," Dr. Kara said one morning, her data pad displaying a long list of messages. A Velkan agricultural colony is having trouble with native fauna destroying crops. They want to know if the creatures can be trained to avoid certain areas instead of being exterminated. "What kind of creatures?" Hyunwoo asked. "Herbivores, actually. Large ones. About the size of your Earth elephants." Hyunwoo smiled. "Tell them yes. That's actually easier than what we've been doing with Komi." Dayun had become essential to their work as well. She designed and built equipment that made training safer and more effective. Enrichment structures, communication devices, even protective gear for people learning to work with dangerous animals. Her engineering skills turned theoretical ideas into practical tools. Jiho documented everything. His videos had become popular across multiple systems, not just as entertainment but as educational material. Universities used them. Research institutions studied them. Some people just watched them to see the impossible made real. One afternoon, Commander Velik summoned Hyunwoo to the command center. The Thrin officer had a holographic display showing a distant solar system. "We have a situation," Velik said without preamble. "A mining colony on the frontier. They've encountered aggressive fauna that's disrupting operations. Several miners have been killed. The colonists are preparing to exterminate the entire population of creatures in the area." "What kind of creatures?" Hyunwoo asked, studying the display. "Pack hunters. Wolf analogs, we think. They call them Vorash. The miners' expansion into the territory has triggered defensive responses. The company that owns the colony wants a quick solution. That usually means elimination. Or it means understanding why they're attacking," Hyunwoo suggested. "That's why I'm offering you the assignment," Velik said. "If anyone can find a non-violent solution, it's you. But this is more dangerous than working with Komi. These are wild creatures in their natural habitat. Multiple individuals working together. It's not the same as training a single animal in a controlled environment." Hyunwoo thought about it. He thought about those miners scared and angry. He thought about the Vorash, defending their territory the only way they knew how. He thought about the inevitable conclusion if nobody intervened. "I'll need my team," he said. "Dayun, Jiho, and Dr. Kara, and I want to bring Komi." "The Rakthar? Why?" "Because the Vorash might respond to another predator differently than they respond to prey. Komi might help me communicate." Velik considered this. Approved. "But be careful. The colony is remote, and help will be hours away if something goes wrong." 5 days later, Hyunwoo stood on the surface of a frontier world, watching the forest that surrounded the mining colony. The trees were strange colors, purple and orange instead of Earth's green. The air smelled different, tasted different, but the situation was familiar. "The Vorash dens are approximately 2 kilometers into the forest," the colony manager said, pointing. "We've tried barriers, but they find ways through. We've tried deterrents, but they keep coming. They're smart and persistent." "Because you're in their territory," Hyunwoo said, studying the forest edge. "They're not attacking. They're defending." "Tell that to the families of the miners who died," the manager replied bitterly. "I'm not saying the miners deserved it," Hyunwoo clarified. "I'm saying the Vorash are acting on instinct. If we understand that instinct, we can find a solution that doesn't require killing them all." He spent 3 days just observing, setting up remote cameras, watching the Varash from a safe distance, learning their patterns. Daehyun helped him identify den locations and travel routes. Jiho documented everything. Dr. Kara analyzed the footage, comparing Vorash behavior to known pack predator patterns from other worlds. They're remarkably similar to Earth wolves, Dr. Kara noted. Pack structure, territorial behavior, communication through vocalizations and body language. If we apply human knowledge of wolf behavior, we might be able to predict their responses. On the fourth day, Hyunwoo made his first direct approach. He brought Komi with him, the Rakthar walking calmly at his side. They approached one of the Vorash observation posts slowly, carefully, making no aggressive moves. The Vorash saw them. 3 adults emerged from the trees, forming a defensive line. They were beautiful creatures covered in fur that shifted between gray and blue. Their eyes were silver, intelligent, and watchful. They were smaller than Komi, but moved with coordinated precision that spoke of pack tactics. The lead Vorash growled, a warning sound. Hyunwoo stopped immediately. He crouched down, making himself smaller, less threatening. Beside him, Komi sat without being told, watching the Vorash with interest but no aggression. "Easy," Hyunwoo said softly, not really expecting the Vorash to understand the word but hoping his tone would communicate his intentions. He reached into his pack slowly and pulled out food. Fresh meat from the colony's supplies. He placed it on the ground and backed away, maintaining eye contact but not staring directly at any one Vorash. Non-threatening interest. The Vorash watched. One sniffed the air. After several long minutes, the lead Vorash approached cautiously and took the meat. It retreated to its pack members and they shared the food while watching Hyunwoo and Komi. "Good start," Daeun said through his earpiece. She was watching from a safe distance with monitoring equipment. "Very good," Dr. Kara agreed. They accepted the offering without attacking. "That's communication." Hyunwoo returned to the same spot every day for the next week. Each time he brought food. Each time the Vorash grew slightly less wary. He never tried to touch them or move too close. He respected their space, their boundaries. He let them set the pace. On the 8th day, something changed. The lead Vorash approached before Hyunwoo put down the food. It stopped just a few meters away, studying him with those silver eyes. Then it did something unexpected. It made a sound soft and questioning. Hyunwoo mimicked the sound back. Not perfectly, but close enough. The Vorash's ears perked up. It made the sound again. Hyunwoo repeated it. "You're communicating," Dr. Kara breathed through the earpiece. Over the next few days, Hyunwoo learned more Vorash vocalizations. He learned the difference between warning sounds and greeting sounds. He learned how they used body language to establish dominance and submission. He learned where their den sites were and how to avoid threatening them. With this knowledge, he worked with the mining colony to establish new protocols. Boundaries that respected Vorash territory. Warning systems that used sounds the Vorash recognized as non-threatening. Changes to work schedules that avoided peak Vorash activity times. The attack stopped. Not immediately, but gradually. The Vorash learned that the miners were no longer a threat. The miners learned to coexist with the pack instead of fighting them. On his last day on the frontier world, Hyunwoo stood at the forest edge one final time. The lead Vorash appeared, as it had every day for the past week. But this time it approached closer than ever before. Close enough that Hyunwoo could have reached out and touched it. He didn't. He stayed still, letting the Vorash make the choice. The creature sniffed his outstretched hand, just as Komi had done 3 months ago in that cargo bay. Then it touched its nose to his palm, a gesture that seemed universal across predator species. Acknowledgement, recognition, maybe even respect. The Vorash turned and disappeared into the forest. Hyunwoo watched it go, feeling something profound settle in his chest. Hope. Back on Nexus Point, Commander Velik met them at the docking bay. The mining colony reports complete cessation of hostile encounters. "They're calling you a miracle worker." "I'm not," Hyunwoo said simply. "I just listened and tried to understand." "That's the miracle," Velik replied. "Most species see predators as problems to be eliminated. Humans see them as beings to be understood. That perspective is changing how the entire galaxy thinks about fauna management." That evening, Hyunwoo received a formal proposition from Commander Velik. Establish a permanent interspecies behavioral program on Nexus Point. Train others in these methods. serve as consultants across the galaxy. Dae-hyun stared at the molecular assembler in front of him and felt his stomach drop. The machine beeped at him for the third time, flashing red symbols he still didn't fully understand. Around him, other students worked quietly at their stations, their hands moving with practiced ease over the glowing control panels. Temperature parameters incorrect, the machine announced in its flat electronic voice. Protein synthesis failed. Please reset and begin again. He sighed and pressed the reset button. This was his 5th attempt at making a simple protein cube, and he had failed every single time. Across the room, he could see Taewon, another human student already finishing his assignment. Taewon caught his eye and smirked before turning back to his perfect gleaming food cube. The Galactic Culinary Institute was supposed to be an honor. When Dae-hyun had been selected for the exchange program, his family had been so proud. His grandmother had hugged him tight and told him to show the galaxy what human cooking could do. But now, 3 months into the program, he was failing. Instructor Velomara glided between the stations, her crystalline body catching the light. She was a Thessarian, tall and elegant, with a voice that sounded like wind chimes. She stopped beside Dae-hyun and observed his latest failure with what he thought might be disappointment. "You are struggling," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, instructor," Dae-hyun admitted. "I don't understand why the temperature won't stabilize." "You are thinking like a human," Velmara said. "You are thinking about heat and time. This is not cooking with fire. This is controlled nutrient assembly. You must think in terms of molecular bonds and protein structures." Dae-hyun nodded, but inside he felt lost. Everything he knew about cooking came from his grandmother's kitchen back on Earth. He knew how to judge when meat was ready by its smell and color. He knew how to taste a soup and know exactly what it needed. But here, cooking meant programming machines and monitoring digital readouts. At the station next to him, a student named Hana worked quietly. She was an Arcturian, with pale blue skin that glowed softly in the dim light. Her people were known for being excellent with technology, and she never seemed to struggle with the assemblers. "The molecular assembler requires precise input," Hana said softly, not looking up from her work. "You are entering the values too quickly. The machine needs 0.3 seconds between each command." Dae-hyun looked at her in surprise. She had barely spoken to him before. "Thank you," he said. "You are welcome," Hana replied. Her skin flickered slightly brighter, which Dae-hyun had learned meant she was pleased. Humans think differently than most species. It is not bad, just different. The class continued for another hour. By the end, Dae-hyun had managed to produce one acceptable protein cube. It sat on his station, perfectly white and perfectly square, meeting all the nutritional requirements. It also looked completely boring. As the students filed out of the classroom, Instructor Velmara called for attention. "Before you leave, I have an announcement. Your final examination will take place in 2 weeks." The room fell silent. Final exams at the Institute were notoriously difficult. "You will be required to prepare a complete meal using only Class 3 molecular assemblers," Velmara continued. "The meal must represent your home culture and meet all galactic nutritional standards. You will have 3 hours. Failure to complete the examination will result in removal from the program." Dae-hyun felt his heart sink. 3 hours with the assemblers making a meal that represented Earth? He could barely make a simple cube. After class, he walked through the station's corridors feeling defeated. Station Harmony 7 was beautiful, with its curved walls and floating gardens, but right now it just made him homesick. He missed Earth, he missed real food. "Having trouble, caveman?" Dae-hyun turned to find Taewon behind him, holding his perfect exam cube. Taewon was also human, but he had grown up on one of the colony worlds where molecular cooking was standard. He had no patience for traditional methods. "I'm managing," Dae-hyun said. "Doesn't look like it," Taewon said. "You know what your problem is? You're stuck in the past. Fire and pans and all that primitive stuff. This is the future. Adapt or fail. Cooking is more than just assembling molecules," Dae-hyun said quietly. Taewon laughed. "Is it? Because last I checked, food is just nutrients. Everything else is sentiment. Grow up." He walked away, still chuckling. Dae-hyun stood in the corridor, hands clenched. He wanted to argue, to defend the cooking his grandmother had taught him, but he didn't have the words. And maybe Taewon was right. Maybe he was just being stubborn. He made his way to the station's biodome, a large recreational area filled with plants and artificial sunlight. It was one of the few places that felt alive on the station. He sat on a bench beneath a tree that reminded him of the ones back home and pulled out his tablet. The exam rules appeared on the screen. He read through them carefully, hoping to find some clue about how to succeed. Most of it was standard: nutritional requirements, time limits, safety protocols. But one line caught his attention. Examination will take place in Biodome Section 7, which operates under modified safety protocols to accommodate botanical research. Modified safety protocols. Dae-hyun sat up straighter. The biodome had different rules because it needed to support actual living plants, which meant he quickly pulled up the station's safety regulations. The biodome was exempt from several standard restrictions, including restrictions on thermal events, including open flames as long as they were properly contained. An idea began to form in his mind. It was crazy. It was probably against the spirit of the exam, if not the actual rules, but it might work. Dae-hyun thought about his grandmother's kitchen, the smell of meat grilling over hot coals, the sizzle of vegetables in a hot pan, the warmth of the fire on his face as he cooked. That was real cooking. That was what food was supposed to be. He looked at the exam rules again. There was no specific requirement to use molecular assemblers. The rules just said to prepare a meal using available resources, and fire was definitely a resource. For the first time in weeks, Dae-hyun smiled. He had 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to figure out how to build a proper fire pit in a space station, 2 weeks to gather ingredients and tools. It was insane. It would probably get him kicked out of the program. But if he was going to fail anyway, he might as well fail doing something he actually understood. He stood up and headed back to the human dormitories. He needed to talk to Ji-woo. She was the smartest human student in the program, always top of the class in the theory courses. If anyone could help him figure out how to make this work, it was her. As he walked, he passed other students from dozens of different species. They all seemed so comfortable with the molecular assemblers, so at ease with this sterile, efficient way of preparing food. But Dae-hyun knew something they had forgotten. Food wasn't just nutrients. It was culture. It was memory. It was love. And he was going to remind them of that, even if it meant burning down the whole exam in the process. Dae-hyun found Ji-woo in the student commons reviewing her notes on a holographic display. She looked up when he approached, pushing her dark hair behind her ear. "You look like you're planning something stupid," she said immediately. "How can you tell?" Dae-hyun asked, sitting down across from her. "You have that look, the same look you had before you tried to ferment kimchi in your dormitory locker." She closed her display. "What is it this time?" Dae-hyun glanced around to make sure no one was listening. The commons area was busy, filled with students from various species, but most were focused on their own studies. He leaned forward and spoke quietly. "I'm going to cook with fire for the final exam." Ji-woo stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed. "No, seriously, what are you planning?" "I'm serious," Dae-hyun said. He pulled out his tablet and showed her the exam rules. "Look, the biodome has modified safety protocols. Open flames are allowed if properly contained. And the exam doesn't specifically require molecular assemblers." Ji-woo's smile faded as she read the regulations. Her eyes moved quickly over the text, and Dae-hyun could see her brilliant mind working through the implications. "This is crazy," she said finally. "Do you know what will happen if you light a fire on this station? Every alarm will go off. Security will think we're under attack." "Only for a moment," Dae-hyun argued. "Once they see it's controlled, they'll realize there's no danger." "You don't know that," Ji-woo said. "Most species abandoned fire cooking thousands of years ago. They think it's barbaric, dangerous. You'll probably get expelled just for trying." "I'm already failing," Dae-hyun said. "I can't work those machines, Ji-woo. I've tried. But cooking with fire? That I can do. That my grandmother taught me." Ji-woo was quiet for a moment. She looked at her notes, then back at Dae-hyun. "What would you cook?" "Grilled meat. Roasted vegetables. Maybe a stew if I can find a pot." Dae-hyun's voice grew more animated as he spoke. "Real food. The kind that smells good while it's cooking. The kind that brings people together. The kind that uses combustion and creates smoke and terrifies every alien on this station," Ji-woo added, but there was something in her voice now. Not quite agreement, but not total dismissal either. "Will you help me?" Dae-hyun asked. Ji-woo sighed deeply. "If I help you and this goes wrong, we both get expelled. I know. Your plan violates about a dozen cultural norms and will probably cause a station-wide panic, I know. And You're going to do it anyway. I am. Jiwoo closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. My grandmother used to cook over fire, too. Back on Earth before she moved to the colonies. I remember visiting her once when I was little. She made soup in an iron pot over burning wood. It was the best thing I ever tasted. Then you understand, Daehyun said. I understand you're insane, Jiwoo replied. But yes, I'll help you. Someone needs to make sure you don't actually burn down the station. Over the next few days, they planned carefully. The biggest challenge was gathering materials without attracting attention. The station's computer systems tracked every requisition, and requesting items like stones or combustible plant matter would immediately flag security protocols. They had to be clever. Jiwoo used her access to the botanical research database to identify plants in the biodome that could serve as fuel. There were several species that produced dry, woody stems. Technically, they were classified as waste material, so removing them wouldn't trigger any alerts. We'll need stones for the fire pit, Daehyun said as they walked through the biodome, pretending to study the plants, something that can handle high heat without cracking. There are decorative rocks in the meditation garden, Jiwoo suggested. They're meant to withstand temperature changes. If we take them a few at a time, no one will notice. They spent a week gathering materials. Daehyun borrowed a metal grating from a broken storage container, claiming he needed it for a personal project. Jiwoo helped him identify ingredients in the station's food synthesizers that could be used for actual cooking. Proteins that resembled meat, vegetables that could be grilled. The hardest part was hiding everything. They stored items in multiple locations across the station, never keeping too much in one place. It felt like planning a heist. On the 5th day of preparation, they had an unexpected complication. Daehyun was in the biodome, carefully moving stones to a hidden spot behind some bushes, when he heard a soft gasp. He turned to find Hana, his Arcturian classmate, staring at him with wide eyes. Her skin was pulsing rapidly between blue and white, which Daehyun had learned meant she was frightened. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daehyun considered lying, but Hana was smart. She would figure it out eventually. "I'm preparing for the exam," he said carefully. "With stones?" Hana moved closer, looking at the pile he had gathered. "These are not for molecular assembly. These are for—" Her skin went completely white. "You are going to make fire." "It's safe," Daehyun said quickly. "I know how to control it. Fire is not safe." Hana's voice rose in pitch. "Fire destroys. Fire kills. My people have historical records of entire settlements lost to uncontrolled combustion." "Controlled combustion," Daehyun corrected. "Humans have been cooking with fire for thousands of years. We know how to manage it." "You are mad," Hana said. She looked around frantically as if expecting help to arrive. "I should report this to Instructor Velmara." "Please don't," Daehyun said. He sat down on the ground, trying to appear non-threatening. "Hana, I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm just trying to cook the way my family taught me." "By using a weapon?" Hana asked. "Fire isn't a weapon," Daehyun said. "It's a tool. Let me show you something." He pulled out his tablet and opened a folder of images he had brought from Earth. Pictures of his grandmother's kitchen. His family gathered around a grill at a summer barbecue. A campfire at night with people sitting around it talking and laughing. "This is fire," Daehyun said, showing her the images. "Yes, it can be dangerous if you're careless. But when you respect it, when you control it properly, it's beautiful. It's warm. It brings people together." Hana looked at the images, her skin slowly shifting back to its normal pale blue. "Your people sit very close to the combustion," she observed. "We do," Daehyun said. "Because fire is part of being human. It's how we cooked our food for most of our history. It's how we stayed warm. It's how we gathered as families and communities." "And you wish to demonstrate this at the examination?" Hana said. "Yes," Daehyun admitted. "I know it seems strange to you, but this is my culture. This is real cooking to me." Hana was quiet for a long time, studying the images. Finally, she looked up at him. "If I do not report you and something goes wrong, I will also be responsible." "Nothing will go wrong," Daehyun promised. "I'll be careful." "You cannot guarantee that," Hana said. But her skin was calm now, a steady soft blue. "However, I have studied human history. Your species did progress from fire-making to space travel. Perhaps you do understand this tool better than I assumed. Does that mean you won't report me? Dae-hyun asked hopefully. Hana's skin flickered slightly brighter. It means I will watch, and if I believe there is true danger, I will stop you myself. Do you understand? Yes, Dae-hyun said. Thank you, Hana. Do not thank me yet, Hana said. You may still fail spectacularly. But as she walked away, Dae-hyun noticed her skin was showing hints of yellow, which meant curiosity. Maybe, just maybe, she was interested in seeing what he would do. That night, Dae-hyun lay in his bunk thinking about the exam. He had 1 week left to prepare, 1 week to gather the last supplies, 1 week before he either proved that human cooking was something special or made himself the laughingstock of the entire Galactic Culinary Institute. His tablet chimed with a message from Jiwoo. Got the last of the fuel. Storage locker 47, don't get caught. Dae-hyun smiled in the darkness. He thought about his grandmother, about her small kitchen with its old stove and well-used pans. He thought about the smell of food cooking, really cooking, not just being assembled molecule by molecule. They could expel him, they could laugh at him, but they couldn't take away what he knew in his bones to be true. Real cooking required fire, and he was going to show them how it was done. The morning of the exam arrived with artificial sunlight streaming through the biodome's transparent ceiling. Dae-hyun stood at the entrance with the other students, his bag heavy with stones and metal grating. His heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone must be able to hear it. Are you sure about this? Jiwoo whispered beside him. She looked nervous, constantly adjusting her toolkit. Too late now, Dae-hyun replied, though his hands were shaking slightly. Instructor Velmara stood at the center of the biodome, her crystalline body reflecting rainbow patterns across the grass. Around her, 50 students from 24 different species waited for instructions. Dae-hyun saw Taewon near the front, looking confident and relaxed. Why wouldn't he be? He had been practicing with the molecular assemblers for weeks. Students, Velmara's voice rang out like chimes. Today you will demonstrate your mastery of culinary science. Each of you has been assigned a station with a Class 3 molecular assembler. You will have 3 hours to prepare a meal that represents your culture, while meeting all galactic nutritional standards. The judges will evaluate based on technical precision, nutritional balance, and cultural authenticity. She gestured, and holographic numbers appeared above different areas of the biodome. Find your assigned station and begin setup. You may start when the timer activates. Students dispersed across the biodome. Dae-hyun found his station number 47 near a cluster of tall plants. There was no molecular assembler waiting for him. Of course not. He hadn't requested one. He set down his bag and began unpacking. First the stones. He arranged them in a circle, building a pit the way his grandfather had taught him. Other students were setting up their assemblers, running diagnostic checks, calibrating their equipment. A Valorian student at the next station watched Dae-hyun with 3 of his eyes while working with the others. Human, you appear to be missing your equipment, he said. I have everything I need, Dae-hyun replied, placing another stone. Word spread quickly. Students began to notice the human building a circle of rocks instead of programming a machine. Conversation started, pointing. Dae-hyun felt dozens of eyes on him. What is he doing? Someone asked, is that primitive architecture? Surely not. Not at the Institute. Taewon pushed through the small crowd that was forming. When he saw the stone circle, he laughed out loud. You can't be serious. Are you really going to do this? In front of everyone? Yes, Dae-hyun said simply, not looking up from his work. This is pathetic, Taewon said. You're going to embarrass all humans. We're trying to show the galaxy we're civilized and you're going to play caveman. I'm going to cook, Dae-hyun said, the way my family taught me. Your family taught you to be obsolete, Taewon snapped. He stormed back to his station, shaking his head. The timer activated with a soft chime. 3 hours began counting down on holographic displays throughout the biodome. Students began working. The air filled with the quiet hum of molecular assemblers and the soft tapping of control panels. Dae-hyun reached into his bag and pulled out the bundle of dried plant stems he and Jiwoo had gathered. He arranged them carefully in the stone pit. Then he pulled out 2 pieces of flint. Hana, working at a nearby station, saw what he was holding. Her skin went bright white. Dae-hyun, she said quietly, once you create a spark, there is no going back. I know, he said. He struck the flints together. Sparks flew into the dried plants, once, twice. On the third strike, a small flame caught. For a moment, nothing happened. The tiny fire crackled quietly, almost lost among the sounds of the working assemblers. Then the alarms began. A piercing siren filled the biodome. Red lights flashed everywhere. The holographic displays all turned crimson with urgent warnings. Unauthorized thermal event detected. A computerized voice announced. Fire detected in Biodome Section 7. All personnel evacuate immediately. Emergency suppression systems activating. Chaos erupted instantly. Students screamed. Some ran for the exits. Others stood frozen, staring at the small fire in Daehyun's stone pit with expressions of pure terror. A Drellian student fainted. 2 Corvians spread their wings and launched into the air, trying to escape through the closed ceiling. Daehyun remained calm. He had expected this. He fed another small piece of plant stem into the flame, keeping it controlled and contained within the stone circle. Automated drones descended from the ceiling, their suppressant nozzles aimed at the fire. Security officers burst through the doors wearing protective gear. "Everyone evacuate," one officer shouted. "Move away from the fire!" But then Instructor Velmara's voice cut through the chaos. "Halt!" She was running toward Daehyun's station, moving faster than he had ever seen a Thessarian move. The security officers stopped, confused. The drones hovered, awaiting new instructions. Velmara reached the fire pit and stared at it. Then she looked at Daehyun, who was still calmly tending the small controlled flame. "You planned this," she said. "Yes, Instructor," Daehyun replied. "I followed all the rules. The biodome has modified safety protocols. Open flames are permitted if properly contained. I checked the regulations." Velmara's crystalline body was shifting colors rapidly, something Daehyun had never seen before. She was silent for a long moment, analyzing the fire pit. The flames were completely contained within the stone circle. There were no combustible materials nearby. The fire was small, controlled, and actually quite safe. The security officers approached cautiously. "Instructor, we need to extinguish this immediately." "No," Velmara said. She turned to face them. "The human is correct. This area has modified protocols. The combustion is contained. There is no actual danger, but it's fire," one officer protested. "Open flame." "That hasn't been allowed on a station in centuries." "It is allowed here," Velmara said firmly. "Check the regulations yourself if you doubt me." She turned to address the control center. "Override the suppression systems. Cancel the evacuation order. This is a controlled demonstration." There was a pause as someone checked the rules. Then the alarm stopped. The red lights faded. The computer voice announced, "Thermal event confirmed as controlled. Resuming normal operations." The sudden silence was almost as shocking as the alarms had been. Students slowly emerged from hiding places. They formed a wide circle around Daehyun's station, staring at the fire with a mixture of fear and fascination. Most of them had never seen actual combustion before. Instructor Velmara looked at Daehyun for a long moment. Her colors had settled into something he couldn't interpret. "If you are going to do this, human," she said quietly, "then do not fail." She walked back to the judges' area. The other instructors were there, all staring in shock. Daehyun took a deep breath. The hard part was over. Now he just had to cook. He pulled out the protein he had prepared, already marinated in a mixture he had made from synthesized ingredients that resembled soy sauce, garlic, and ginger. He placed the metal grating over the fire pit. The flames licked up around the edges. As the metal heated, Daehyun arranged slices of the protein on the grate. Within seconds, the meat began to sizzle, and then the smell started. It drifted across the biodome, carried by the gentle air circulation. The smell of meat cooking. The smell of caramelization and char and smoke. The smell of actual food being transformed by fire. Students who had been focused on their molecular assemblers looked up. Noses wrinkled. Sensory organs quivered. A Helvrian student spoke in a trembling voice. "What is that odor?" "Maillard reaction," Jiwoo said. She had positioned herself near Daehyun's station, ready to help if needed. When proteins and sugars are exposed to high heat, they create hundreds of new flavor compounds. You can't replicate it with molecular assembly. The meat sizzled and popped. Daehyun turned the pieces carefully, watching the edges brown and crisp. He added vegetables to the grate, synthesized items that resembled peppers and onions. They began to char, releasing their own aromatic compounds. More and more students stopped working. The molecular assemblers hummed on, forgotten. Everyone was watching the human and his impossible fire. Hana approached slowly, her skin flickering through several colors. "It does smell pleasant," she admitted quietly. "I did not expect that." "Fire cooking is an art," Daehyun said, focusing on his work. "It's not just about heat. It's about smoke, about timing, about knowing when something is ready." The 3 hours were passing. Other students had finished their dishes, producing perfect cubes and spheres of nutritionally optimized food. They sat on pedestals at each station, waiting to be judged. Daehyun's food was nearly ready. He plated it simply on a ceramic dish Jiwoo had helped him acquire. Grilled meat, charred vegetables, and a small portion of the fermented vegetable mixture he had hidden in his quarters for weeks. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't uniform. It definitely didn't meet standard galactic presentation guidelines, but it was real. It was food made with fire and skill and love. The timer reached 0. The examination was complete. Instructor Velmara and the other judges began moving between stations, evaluating each dish. Daehyun watched them approach, his heart in his throat, but then he noticed something. Around him, hundreds of aliens were watching. Not just students. Station personnel had gathered at the observation windows. Word had spread about the human who had created fire. They weren't just watching the judges. They were staring at his food. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The biodome was completely silent except for the crackling of embers in Daehyun's fire pit. Then Instructor Velmara began to glow. Bright, brilliant colors rippled through her crystalline body, colors Daehyun had never seen before. When she spoke, there was something different in her voice, something that sounded almost like joy. "Yes," she said simply. Dr. Santha looked shocked. "You cannot be serious." He failed to complete the examination parameters. The proper response is to mark him as incomplete and move on. "I am completely serious," Velmara said. She turned to face the other judges. "How long has it been since any of you felt excitement about food? Real excitement, not just satisfaction at meeting nutritional requirements?" Master Krell ruffled his feathers. "That is not the point of this examination, is it not?" Velmara asked. "We are training students in culinary science. But what is the purpose of food? Simply to deliver nutrients? Or is there something more?" She gestured at the crowd around them. "Look at them. Every being here has stopped what they were doing to watch this human cook. They are fascinated. They are hungry, not just for the food itself, but for the experience of it." Professor Lim's multiple eyes were darting between Velmara and the crowd. "It is highly irregular." "Good," Velmara said. "Perhaps we have been too regular for too long." She turned to Daehyun. "You have 1 hour. Feed as many as you can. Show us what human cooking truly is." Daehyun could hardly believe what he was hearing. Jiwoo grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with excitement. Hana's skin was glowing so bright she looked like a beacon. "I will need help," Daehyun said. "Then ask for it," Velmara replied. Daehyun looked around at the other students. Most were still staring in confusion, but some he saw understanding in their faces. Curiosity. Interest. "Anyone who wants to learn how to cook with fire," he called out. "Come help me." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Hana stepped forward, her skin pulsing with nervous yellow. "I will help. Even though fire frightens me, I wish to understand." Jiwoo was already moving toward the storage areas. "I will get more ingredients from the synthesizers." Then, surprisingly, more students began to move. A Valorian named Tessa, a Drellian called Mora, a Corvian student whose name Daehyun had never learned. One by one, they approached the fire pit. Even some of the station personnel who had been watching came down from the observation areas. A maintenance worker, 2 botanical researchers, a security officer who had been part of the team that responded to the fire alarm. Within minutes, Daehyun had more than 20 volunteers. "First, we need to make the fire bigger," he said. He looked at Jiwoo. "Can you get more fuel from the biodome waste?" "Already on it," she replied, running toward the composting area. Daehyun showed the volunteers how to arrange stones to expand the fire pit. The Corvian student, whose wing strength was impressive, moved the larger rocks easily. Mora, the Drellian, used her water manipulation abilities to cool heated stones so they could be repositioned safely. Jiwoo returned with armfuls of dried plant material. Daehyun carefully fed the embers, building the fire larger. Flames rose higher, and he saw several aliens step back nervously. Fire is safe when you respect it, he said, demonstrating how to maintain proper distance. Never turn your back on it. Always know where the flames are. And never put anything in the fire that you do not want to burn. Hana watched the growing flames, her skin flickering between white and blue. It is beautiful, she whispered. Terrible, but beautiful. That is exactly right, Daehyun said. Fire is both. That is why humans learned to respect it, not fear it. More ingredients arrived. Station personnel, caught up in the moment, began bringing food from storage areas. Proteins, vegetables, fruits. Things that had been synthesized for consumption, but had never been cooked with actual fire. Daehyun organized his helpers into teams. Jiwoo led a group preparing marinades and seasonings, mixing synthesized ingredients to approximate the flavors of soy sauce, sesame oil, and spices. Hana's team washed and cut vegetables. The Corvian and his friends managed the fire, adding fuel and maintaining the heat. Taewon watched from his station, arms crossed. A few other students joined him, refusing to participate, but they were the minority. Most of the biodome was now focused on the growing feast. Metal grating appeared from somewhere. More plates, utensils. A chef from the station's main dining facility arrived with proper tongs and even a large pot. For stew, she said. She was a Thessarian older than Velmara, with deep purple crystalline structures. I have not made stew in 40 years. I almost forgot the joy of it. Daehyun showed them how to grill, how to judge doneness by sight and smell, rather than precise temperature readings, how to taste and adjust seasonings, how to work with the fire's natural rhythms instead of trying to control every variable. It was chaotic. It was messy. Several things got burned. The Drellian student accidentally put too much fuel on the fire and created a column of flame that set off alarms again until Velmara overrode them. But it was alive. The smell of cooking, food filled the entire biodome. Smoke rose in gentle spirals, filtered by the station's air systems but still carrying the aroma of char and spice and caramelization. People began gathering around the fire. Not just watching now, but participating, sharing stories. A Corvian elder spoke about ancient harvest festivals. A human maintenance worker taught others a song his family sang while cooking. Hana, growing braver, actually touched a piece of warm metal fresh from the fire and laughed with delight at the sensation. The first batch of food came off the fire. Grilled protein, roasted vegetables, the stew that was simmering in the borrowed pot. Daehyun arranged it on plates and began distributing portions. Everyone shares, he said. That is the human way. When you cook with fire, you cook for community. The food was distributed. Aliens who had never eaten anything but molecularly assembled nutrients tried food that had been transformed by flame. Their reactions were remarkable. Master Krell stood with his eyes closed, a piece of grilled vegetable in his beak. This is what food used to taste like, he said quietly. Before efficiency, before optimization, this is what we gave up. A young Valorian student was crying. I did not know food could make you feel something, she said. More and more people arrived. Word had spread throughout the station. Soon there were over 100 beings gathered around the fire pit, and Daehyun's volunteers were cooking as fast as they could. Taewon finally approached. He looked uncomfortable but curious. Can I try some? He asked quietly. Daehyun handed him a plate without comment. Taewon took a bite. Then another. His expression changed. This is how grandmother used to cook, he said, his voice thick. Before she moved to the colonies. Before everything became synthesized. He looked at Daehyun. I forgot what real food tasted like. So did I almost, Daehyun said. That is why I had to do this. The hour passed quickly. When Instructor Velmara finally called time, over 200 beings had been fed. The fire still burned, now surrounded by people from dozens of species, all talking and eating and sharing. The judges gathered near Daehyun. His exam dish had long since been consumed. His station was a disaster area of scattered stones, empty plates, and cooking implements. By every technical standard, he had failed the examination. Dr. Santha spoke first. You did not complete the assigned task. You created a dangerous situation. You violated numerous protocols. Daehyun nodded. He had known this was coming. However, she continued, and there was something soft in her voice. You reminded us what food is supposed to be. Not just nutrients. Not just efficiency. You showed us that cooking is connection, culture, heart. Master Krell stepped forward. The examination asked you to represent your culture. I believe you have done that more thoroughly than any student in this institution's history. Professor Lim was making rapid notes on a tablet. The chemical analysis is remarkable. The flavor complexity achieved through combustion creates compounds we cannot efficiently synthesize. This has significant implications for our entire field. Velmara was the last to speak. Her colors were warm and bright. Dae-hyun, you failed to complete the examination as designed. His heart sank. Therefore, we cannot give you a standard passing grade, she continued. We will need to create something new. Something we have never awarded before. She touched her tablet, and a holographic certificate appeared in the air. The Galactic Culinary Institute hereby awards you the first ever Cultural Excellence Award for demonstrating that the purpose of food transcends mere nutrition, and for reminding us all why we cook in the first place. The crowd erupted in cheers. Species-specific expressions of joy filled the air. Feathers ruffled. Skin glowed. Water being splashed. Humans clapped. Jiwoo hugged Dae-hyun tightly. Hana's skin was brilliant gold. Even Tae-wan was smiling, but Velmara was not finished. Furthermore, beginning next semester, the Institute will offer a new elective course, Ancestral Cooking Methods. It will cover traditional techniques from all species, including controlled combustion cooking. More cheers. And this fire pit, Velmara said, gesturing to the stone circle that Dae-hyun had built, will become a permanent installation in the biodome, available for any student who wishes to learn the old ways. Dae-hyun felt tears on his face. He thought about his grandmother,